Thank you very much indeed, Anishka, and I'm really delighted to be here. This is a very welcome coming together of two organisations, the IPU and ActionAid, which have somewhat different aims, but indeed there's a synergistic effect in the work that they do, strengthening parliamentary democracy and in particular looking at the rights of women, sustaining the rights of women. I think you're going to hear much more about the programme that ActionAid is running in due course, so I won't really go into that in any detail. What I really want to point out, or perhaps sort of set the scene, is that we are here really to express our concern for the safety and promotion of women as the cornerstones of democracy, and our focus today obviously is on Afghanistan. 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, we paid lip service to this idea that women obviously have rights in Afghanistan, but the job was to ensure that they knew that and that they were able to exercise those rights. And I think that in the intervening period, there have been an astonishing number, of changes in that country, and much as we are pessimistic, I think there is also room for some optimism, and indeed the reason why I think that is important is because the programmes that are going to go ahead now with added incentive and energy are building upon a base that is already, albeit fragile, but it is already there. I think all of us know that there are now women MPs in Afghanistan. I think 27% of the MPs in Afghanistan are women. Many of them have been here on various visits, and nearly all of us here, I think, have met them and indeed have been extremely impressed with the work that they are trying to do in the face of very severe difficulties. There are women journalists in Afghanistan. They too face difficulties of the sort that perhaps journalists in this country do not as yet. There are women engineers in Afghanistan, and there are civil servants, senior civil servants. And as we speak, I think there are an increasing number of graduates from high schools in Afghanistan, but also from universities, whether that be within Afghanistan itself or in surrounding countries, who are graduating in the liberal arts, in the sciences, in medicine, whatever it might be. So, I mean, what we're really talking about is that silently, perhaps, not so well advertised, there is a whole generation of younger people who are becoming qualified and who are the next generation of leaders in Afghanistan, of which a significant percentage are women. That is something to be extremely proud of and happy about. The new constitution in Afghanistan protects women's rights. In 2009, the law on elimination of violence against women occurred, and that is a landmark law, as I think all of us again here know. There's a new national action plan for women, and women's shelters have now grown up around the country, and it's not just the physical building of the shelter, but the fact is that women in many communities, particularly rural communities, are now aware that there are these places to which they can go if they are physically or in any other way abused within the context of their own families. There was a recent TV programme on Afghanistan, because all of us are now beginning to focus on what will happen in 2014 when the rest of the ISAF troops withdraw. And I think that the programme that came out was somewhat pessimistic about the prospects for Afghanistan, and particularly the prospects for women and their freedoms and their rights. And what was really interesting to me was that this film became available to a whole group of people that I know and have known for a long time in Afghanistan, particularly in a high school there, which is largely girls. And they came back to me on sort of Facebook and on email and by various other means, and they were absolutely horrified at the pessimism of this particular program, because they said, look, what we've got in Afghanistan now is different. It is completely different from 10 or 11 or even 12 years ago. It is a country which actually knows what democracy is about. We may not have achieved it, but we know what it is about. We know that women have rights. We may not have achieved them, but we know that they do exist. We know that there are mechanisms that we ourselves could institute in order to gain those rights. even if the Taliban, I mean, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but they're saying that even if the Taliban take over, which I think a lot of people feel they might, it will be a very, very different takeover. It will be a very different Afghanistan, because there will be people, women included in Afghanistan, who will actually say very loudly and very clearly no, and that will make it into a very different country from the one it was when all the good work began in 2001. So I'm inclined to be less pessimistic, or at least I'm optimistic that I can be less pessimistic about what is going on in that country, and I'm determined to maintain that attitude of a degree of optimism, and then, you know, that's why it's very wonderful to be here and to see what is going on and to talk to people, all of whom are involved in Afghanistan in one way or another. So we have some encouraging news, but not all is rosy in the garden, as I think, again, we would have to concede. I keep saying in many different contexts that democracy and individual freedoms and rights are not a once and for all gain. They are processes that need to be nurtured, and we know that from even within our own society. I mean, if we talk about something like a free press, which we have here, well, we do have a free press, but we have a free press because there are people who constantly watch any potential infringement of that freedom. We have individual rights because there are people, individuals themselves, but also organisations that look at any erosion of civil liberties. So I think that sort of demonstrates that in any community which is undergoing a transition from something which is totalitarian towards something which approaches democracy, is that the institutions of civil society are extremely important, and much of what is being done by both IPU and Afghan Aid is actually very much in that stream of work which is attempting to familiarise people with democracy and how the mechanisms by which they can maintain that democracy and maintain rights. We know also that the institutions of democracy, whether that be women's groups, free press, independent judiciary, and a host of much more local initiatives, require resources. I mean, you can't do it for nothing. But it doesn't require an awful lot. We're talking about training resources. And I think that the concern, perhaps, of the panel here, but also you and the audience, is to ensure that those resources will be forthcoming in the months to come, I mean immediately in the months to come. And that is something which I, as Lord Speaker, can't really be involved with because it smacks of politics. But nevertheless, it is something that I know towards the end of this meeting, this lunchtime meeting, you will be resolved that you will try to do something about that as a group. And of course, as a group, you do have quite a powerful voice. There are many, many other initiatives which are going to be taking place in the coming months, notably, for example, the IPU conference on, in conjunction with the Commonwealth Parliamentary, CPA Association, on gender in politics and the contribution that women can make to politics, at which I imagine that you will have quite a significant Afghan contingent to contribute to that particular conference. That's the big conference of the year, which I think takes place in November. And I know too that the parliamentary network for supporting women in Afghanistan is something that Lucia is going to be talking about, and indeed is a direct effort to try to support those women who have become politicians, but as I say, who do their work under really quite difficult circumstances and are constantly threatened. And so to support them may not require an enormous number of financial resources, but does require resources. So that again is something that we should be aware of. And I think too, the more that we can, or you, perhaps you, can engage in bringing together a large number of individuals in this country, in Europe and well beyond, who have that concern about how Afghanistan is going to progress in the coming months and years, the more that those efforts can be brought together, with, if not a single voice, then a sort of concerted voice, the better. In my days as a campaigner, some time ago now, it always seemed to me that there was there were very clear criteria if you wanted a campaign to be successful. And one of them was that the message had to be very, very, very clear. A very clear message. No ifs, no buts, no ands, just a clear message. The second thing was that it had to be doable. It's no good asking for something that's not doable. And therefore one can sort of, you can, as it were, layer your demands. You start off with one which is really doable and then one which is slightly less doable. And then the third thing would be that there is actually a large number of people from different walks of life and from different organisations and maybe from different countries who support and therefore become that single voice. And it's amazing what people can do. And I've no doubt here that your intention to ensure that women's rights are sustained in Afghanistan, I've no doubt that that is what your aim is, and I've no doubt that you will have a really profound impact, and I thank you for all that you are doing.
Thank you very much.